Inspiring Uganda, you're watching UBC TV. Pleasure to have your company. Every single time you choose a national broadcaster, you make us proud. And good to know you're watching this particular episode of Business Today right here. My name is Sandra Kahunde Gaba. And as always, excited about this whole session. And I'm sure you can tell. But anyways, just to let you know that to us here, every story is a business story. And our business insight. We always bring you entrepreneurs, economists who have made it, listening to your stories, the personalities for the day. They give us heads up and they encourage you and they inspire us, which works for us. And we talk lots to do with the sector players of the economy and a whole lot more. You can always expect that and much more right here on Business Today. Now, our guest for the day to inspire us, having Catherine Wines. I believe you had a name, it rings a bell to you, and when you talk about World Remit and also remittances, you get to think about Catherine Wines. She's going to be a guest for the day, and we're going to talk about lots to do with her company, since it's essential, that is in 2010, and getting to understand remitting, the online transfer of transaction that goes on, the transfer of money when you speak about online transactions, and we have to understand more of that. Catherine, pleasure to have your company.
Thank you very much for asking.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm sorry for my voice. Unfortunately, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm a bit croaky today.
Away from UK, how does it feel to be in the Pearl of Africa, Uganda?
Oh, lovely here. First, the sun, the people, very friendly, and Uganda has been a long-standing market for us. We started here in 2012, and yesterday I visited our first partner, and that was lovely to see him and to see how he had grown his business as well at the same time as we had grown ours. So that was lovely.
You're the director and co-founder of World Remit.
Yes.
What inspired you? How did you start up? How did you get to think of an online transaction?
Yeah, I've been in the remittance sector for a number of years, since the early 2000s, and obviously in what I call the traditional, the offline business. And I knew towards the end, before I left the last company I was working for, that we had to do things differently. And when I met Ismail Ahmed, my co-founder, who had the idea of bringing this business online, I knew that that was right, and I certainly believed in the idea as well. So, and that was very much our mission, is to change the way remittances were done, which had been, I say, very traditional, which had been very costly and still are costly. But it was very much our mission to change that, to make it easier, faster, but also cheaper, to use the technology to make it, to do that.
Weren't you worried about the existing competition at the moment? Because I believe there were bigger banks existing at that particular time.
Yes, well, it was what we call the traditional players like Western Union, MoneyGram, who obviously had been in existence for many years. So in a way, had a little bit of a kind of a monopoly situation, and a bit maybe complacent as well. Like the big banks, it's very difficult when you reach a certain stage to think, about new ideas and be agile. That's the advantage that we had. We started from scratch with a blank page, and we could really look and say, how can we make it better? We didn't have any legacy system. We could really use the new technology to develop systems which are going to be easier, faster, but also very secure, and which would meet all the regulators' kind of demands.
I believe there are about 1 million transactions that carry on each and every single time, maybe throughout the years. And you have about this particular technology helps or is an advantage for about 140 countries. But I believe at the start you had breakdowns. Maybe a little about them, the challenges you encountered.
Yes, when you start a business, you never know exactly how it's going to happen until you actually do it. You can plan, you can think you tested everything, but until you actually do it, you find other problems. So, sometimes the system was a bit slow, and because, we didn't know how many customers we were going to get at any stage. So, but that's the thing that, like any business, especially any digital business or tech business, had to go through.
Wow. And then maybe for the Africans? We cannot deny to say that Africans take long, or maybe getting a reception from people on how they've received the new technology and the new innovations that are coming day by day. When you speak about Africa, how is the reception?
Well, for me, for us, Africa has always been our top, continent, and today we said about 50% of our volume goes to Africa. And what has been really exciting is when we started, on the send side, we were totally digital, 100% digital, didn't take cash. But obviously, at the receive end, especially in Africa, when we started, it was the traditional cash collection. But what was exciting is we saw the new technology emerging in the form of mobile money. And that's changed. I call it a revolution. And I think that's changed, the face of Africa in terms that suddenly, where 80% of the population had no access to financial services, suddenly they had access to, and it was a simple system because there's on the old phones able to send money to each other via mobile money. And we thought, well, if people can use that in their own country, what country send remittances to mobile money, and that's where we started, contacting all the mobile operators and connecting to mobile operators to help, the diaspora be able to send very quickly to their family, instantly, monies to their mobile.
Okay, maybe speaking to a young entrepreneur out there, maybe a young female who wants to be in your own world, because I know someone out there, you're high inspiration on the other hand when it comes to technology, and maybe they want to take it upon themselves as a career. What advice would you give them?
Well, if you have an idea and a dream, you've got to pursue it. Might not work, but until you try it, you've got to do it. And I think these days, I visited, for example, the innovation village in Intenda in Kampala 2 days ago, and it was very exciting to see all these young people who had ideas and wanted to do things and developing things. What obviously is needed is maybe a support network. Sometimes being on your own is very difficult. And what you need to do, I think, if you have an idea, is to talk about others. Get friends maybe or family or business, kind of support where they can, help you maybe putting a model together and say, is this going to work? Does this make sense? So that's why I said those hubs are very useful, because that's where you can exchange, talk to other people who will understand and give you ideas or maybe challenge your idea, and that's very important. And that's why, that's something I've talked over the last 2 days to a number of people, including, government representative, the importance of the government to support innovation through those hubs by giving them help so they can provide a network which will help entrepreneurs to develop and create, really valuable business for Uganda.
Well, what do you think such a transfer of money or maybe such a technology will help out to a developing country?
Well, the remittances, if you look at the statistics, remittances is about $600 billion a year are being sent from the diaspora overseas back home. That's amount to more than 3 times the development aid. So remittances are critical to people. They contribute generally a fairly large percentage of GDP. In Uganda, it's about 5% of GDP. So very important for people's daily life in terms of simple support, food, education, rent, but also school fees, health, hospital fees, and so on. But what we see as well is, it helps people set up business. The diaspora help people, set up maybe micro businesses. We have an example in the UK of this lady who is a nurse in the UK from Kenya, and helping her 2 sons set up an agri-business in Kenya by sending money, regularly. And now those two sons have got a nice business with employing people. So the diaspora has got a really important role to play in sending remittances back home.
Well, can this service like the World Remit help an entrepreneur? Can it be an agent of change among the young entrepreneurs?
Yes, I think, we are digital, and therefore, there's no doubt, our customer base initially has been very much young people who adopt, new technology. And I think it's kind of an example as well of, we started 3 of us 8 years ago. We are now 700 people. So it shows that it can be done. And if the idea is right, and I said you develop that idea, you can make it and make, a change for people.
Welcome back. Good to know you're still a part of this episode of Business Today. Still here with Catherine Wines, World Remittance, and of course a whole lot to do with getting us to know how the technology works and what really inspired her. I believe at least you're picking one or two things at this particular moment. We want to find out, Catherine. Are you saying you had Ahmed from Nigeria?
Yeah, Ismail. No, Ismail Ahmed was from Somaliland.
From Somaliland.
Yes.
I'm seeing a different breeds.
Yeah.
UK and then Nigeria and then
No,
Somalia.
so Somaliland and yes, so yeah, Ismail is from Somaliland, and he himself,
Any
when-
challenge you encountered there because they're having different currencies altogether?
No, that's part of the business. Both of us have been in the business for a long time, so we know the workings of the business. What was changing is the way it was transmitted, and obviously trying to persuade people to change their views about doing it offline. Are you going to a shop to actually using the website or the app? So it's quite a change, because when it comes to financial services, and certainly that's something for people, new entrepreneurs looking at fintech, financial services technology, you need to understand that customers are sometimes reluctant to change. It takes them time to change. When it comes to money, they feel insecure, and so you've got to persuade customers. You've got to give them make them trust you, so then they switch to a new service.
You're talking about customers. It
Yeah.
also reminds me more to do with the consumers when it comes to the money transfer technology. Did you also have it in mind changing the consumer behavior?
Yes, and it's not so much changing the consumer behavior, but it's reacting to their needs. And we found that with a digital way of sending money and mobile money as well, that people change the pattern of sending. So, for example, when it was fairly, inconvenient to send money, you had to go to a shop, draw cash, go to a shop, queue, and fill a form and so on. People would send maybe less often, but a bigger sum, because the costs were high, a bigger sum once, and maybe sending it to the head of the family, and then the head of the family would, distribute it among the other members of the family. Now with digital remittances, and also with mobile money at the other end, we find that people, tend to send directly to people. So they send lower amounts more often, but directly to people rather than to one person. And what we found is that it benefited women, because often women were waiting for money to be given to them by maybe the head of the family, where now they are, with mobile money, they've been able to become much more independent and have control of their budget and their money. So that has been a really, as far as a woman, I think that's been a really positive impact of both, mobile money, financial inclusion, but also, gender kind of gap. But also what we found, for example, in Uganda, is a lot of our remittance to mobile money actually are in the rural areas. Because generally in a rural area, if you have to travel a long way to collect money, it also costs. You probably have to take a bus or something to go and collect the money. Whereas if you can receive it on your mobile, it's instant, safer, because you don't have to carry cash on you. And we find that now. Diaspora who have family in a rural area like to send to mobile money, because they know it's instant, safer, and obviously much more convenient for their family.
You talked about women there.
Yeah.
Those took my attention.
Yeah.
And recently, this whole week, we've been talking more and celebrating financial inclusion. Yes. What would your take be, especially for the women out there? Is it a benefit to you, or
Yeah, I think, as I said, as you know, it is Financial Inclusion Week in Uganda, and in fact, I was at a conference yesterday set up by FSD Uganda to talk about financial inclusion. And, to me, certainly mobile money has really contributed to improve financial inclusion. If we look at, the stats, about 3 years ago, there was 2.5 billion unbanked in the world. In last year, the last report, which was produced recently, that has reduced by 45% to 1.7 billion, kind of person. Well, most of it is due because mobile money, that decrease has been can be attributed to mobile money because people have, a lot of people have got a mobile, they don't have a bank account, but they have a mobile, and therefore they've been able to open a mobile account. And as I said, women have taken advantage of that. There's still a gender gap, unfortunately, still in terms of mobile money account. More men have mobile money account than women, but there certainly things to be done. Maybe there's still, cultural issues. Literacy can be a problem, especially in the rural areas. So there's still work to be done, but there's definitely as a major contribution, positive contribution.
Well, okay. Now getting to the other bit, in 21st century, so many things have come into play. Lots of technologies being introduced, and now we cannot fail to talk about cryptocurrency itself.
Yeah.
That is also taking the word of the day.
Yeah, crypto is. We have always, kind of new developments and new technology. I think crypto has, a role to play in the future, but it's still in its infancy. And the problem it's suffering for the moment also is obviously there's no consistent view of regulation. So you have countries who can welcome crypto and have accepted it, some which are making it illegal, and some countries which are developing regulation. So it's a bit of a difficult, especially if you deal on a global basis like we do, to deal with that type of kind of new product. So I think it needs to be developed again because it's still, as I said, it's still in its infancy. But there's no doubt that things will change in the future. What I'm particularly more interested, I think, is the technology which supports crypto, which is blockchain, which you have to separate. Blockchain is distributed ledger kind of technology. Has got a lot of possible application, which are actually very useful, like kind of ID verification. You can use it for a number of things, and we are already seeing some development. And I think that technology is really, really interesting. For me, to be frank, I think blockchain is a lot more interesting than crypto at this stage.
You have blockchain, quite a broader topic that we won't exhaust when start talking about, but at least it has more offers.
Yeah.
You mentioned something to do with regulators there.
Yeah.
And your customers are, of course, world over as they transact every single time. In the different countries, about 140 of them, they have different regulators.
Yeah.
Does that affect you?
Yes, and that's why potentially the cost of remittance is high, because a company like us have to be regulated, which I agree totally with. Regulation is important to protect the customers, but the inconsistency of regulation across the world can be challenging, especially for new technology company, because the problem is a lot of regulators are still, and the laws and the regulation are still, based on before the new technology, arose. So they have not adopted or adapted to those new regulations. So sometimes they will not accept for us to do things in certain country because they're not, they have not adapted the legislation to the new technology. An example, for example, is when in Malaysia, for example, they didn't accept online KYC, know your customer online, where you upload your ID. So we could not operate in Malaysia. So what happened is the regulator has set up what they call a sandbox, a regulatory sandbox, which is a way to, test a new product in a controlled environment, and therefore for the regulator to learn about that new technology and develop new policies and regulation. Now that's what happened in Malaysia, and now Malaysia allows eKYC, which they didn't before. So I think that's why, when I talk to regulators across the world, I encourage them to adopt this regulatory sandbox program, because it's really helpful, and it will help both the government, the regulator, but also all these young entrepreneurs who want to set up this business and who want to test those new products. And obviously, if you are going to get licensed, it's very expensive, but if you can test it in a safe environment, it will make it much easier and it will benefit everybody.
Okay. At the end of the day, everyone will tap into the share. Well, good to know you're still a part of today's episode of Business Today. My name is Sandra, and I'm having a great time with Catherine right here. But for now, let's have Sounds of Business, and then shortly we'll return with Catherine, having more for you. Stay with us.
I like to welcome you, Aquaba. I like to welcome you, Aquaba.
Shawe Venantius, Sergeant Ranger Guide, Queen Elizabeth National Park, Station Dishasha. And we are here having a look at a pride of lions. And this is the commonest pride scene, which comprises of 4 adults, 3 females, and 1 sub-adult male, plus 4 cubs. They are here. Now, though the group is missing 1 female, maybe on the ground or up in the tree, somewhere else. And they are up in the trees because, as I said, we call them tree climbing lions. The reason is that they climb up in the trees, which is not common in other lions. And they are nowhere different, the same species of lions we have on the planet Earth. But these ones, they have that tactic and ability of climbing up in the trees, because we feel it's because our soil here is clayish. So after rain, it holds a lot of water, so which forces them to leave that muddy, watery place to make themselves clean and smart. And then they go and rest up in the trees. That's why they commonly up in trees most of the time.
Thanks for watching and staying. Business Today, happening on UBC, here to inspire you. And still with Catherine, getting to know lots to share. And I hope you enjoy the Sounds of Business. We usually bring you that particular feature for you to get to know where to invest. And maybe if you want to tour around the nation, also a way of promoting domestic tourism. Catherine, good to have you again. And now, just onto still our topic of discussion for the young investors who want to tap into this. What advice would you give them?
I think, obviously, if you're an investor, and there's also very tough from the very small to, VC funds, it's obviously identifying maybe an area which you are particularly interested, and which you potentially have a bit of knowledge, because then you can assess the risk. At the end of the day, if you're an investment, you need to decide how much, what's the risk you are prepared to take. And if you wanted to, especially with new business, there's always a risk that the business will fail, and therefore you will lose your money. So I think assessing the risk and deciding what you want to do is very important. And there's I talk to people who are now setting up what they call angel business club, which is, so they get together and look at business together, so they can make a better assessment of the business and decide whether to invest in it as a group rather than as an individual. and that's certainly things that could be done in Uganda, for example, where people who have a bit money could get together and help those young entrepreneurs who need finance, because finance for any new business is always a problem, because the banks are generally not prepared to take that much risk, and therefore they need to identify other type of investors.
Okay, maybe what would you want to see change for us to have a better platform to do business, especially for the young entrepreneurs?
Yes, I think it's make it easier, the support, the regulation. I said that the sandbox, as I mentioned earlier, is very important. Is for the regulators to understand the technology and therefore help those new businesses. Banks in some countries are getting there by setting up some hub as well to help and for them to understand new technology, because the banks have got a big problem. They have a legacy system, and for them changing is quite difficult. So they are starting understanding they need to learn from those young businesses how they can change their processes and meet the consumer needs, because that's all what it's about. It's about understanding the consumer needs and therefore building your business around that.
Away from work, before we let you go, what interests you or what takes up your time?
Well,
don't tell me you're into reading books and looking at figures, transactions.
No. I'm very much. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm very interested in the tech scene, and in London, obviously, as you know, London is a very much a big tech hub, and so I get involved with a lot of small hubs. I do a lot of mentoring, because for me, especially as a woman, I think it's important to support women, reaching their goals, and I think mentoring is very important. So I do a lot of mentoring, and so I keep very busy that way.
And what have you admired about the Pearl of Africa, Uganda?
Pardon?
What have you admired? What has taken your attention?
Uganda, I think it's the gentleness of people. I really like, and as I said, it's very close to our heart at World Remit, because it was one of our first countries when we started. So we've always been very close to Uganda. So as I said, yesterday I went and meet some of the early people who started working with us, so that was really great.
Well, so I should say, Uganda is close to you. Maybe a message that you would want to share with the Ugandans before, a message that you, from your heart.
Well, as I said, I think Uganda has a great potential, and what I like is, there's so many young people here, and that applies to a lot of Africa, but especially in Uganda, and there's so much potential, and I think it's really important for everybody to really support that potential, because all these young people have got such great ideas and they need support. So please, look at that and support your young people.
There's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
When I see women so passionate about business and everything, and also supporting other young women out there, it takes me away. It kind of motivates me as well. And I look at Catherine and I'm like, if you happen to be the next president, what you want to see changed? That is what I'm looking at. You've never thought about?
No, politics is not for me. I much prefer doing things and getting things done. So I don't think I would ever go into politics. For me, it's I can talk to the politicians and tell them what they need, and that's what as a company we want to give the message. We see things as it happens. So for us, it's we can say, well, these are the problems. These are the type of things that you can work on.
Okay. Way forward for World Remit?
Well,
bigger things.
Bigger things, yes. Certainly, we want to continue to grow in our markets, but also look at the product, how we can refine the product and make it better. And certainly in Africa, for us, as I said, it's an important continent for us. We've 50% of our volumes go to Africa. So it's looking at what else we can do, and we're now in our next stage of development is looking at sending from Africa. For the moment, Africa is very much a receive network. Now we want to be able to allow people to send as well. So you'll see new things happening in the.
Definitely had a wonderful time, a great time right here, sharing with Catherine Catherine Wines, all the way from UK, sharing with us a lot to do with World Remit and how Uganda can tap into there, and also advice for the young investors, for the young entrepreneurs out there. I believe at least you picked one or two things along the way. Here, always to inspire every single weekday, Monday to Friday, business today. More updates still coming your way. Keep watching. Thank you so much, Kathy, for your time.
Thank
Wish
you very
all
much.
the best. All our love
Thank you.
to your people at home.
Thank you. Thank you very much.